It's been what, coming up on 3 years worth of trials and tribulations and
Yeah.
revisions, design changes, retention changes.
Yeah. I mean, we actually started this 3 years ago, built prototypes 3 years ago. We built both rear deploy and the forward cam over deploy, and tested both of those. When I say tested, he tested them. I hadn't shot them until this year. The reliability of the cam over forward deploying blade system is kind of what we've settled on. But the one thing we didn't like was that you didn't get great entry holes like with our initial designs, and like most forward deploy or cam over designs, you don't get a great entry hole. So we started trying to figure out how do we do that. And then we also were trying to decrease the overall geometry of the head.
Yeah.
Make it more compact. Because
Yeah.
they're all just way too big and too long.
Yeah, I think in the market, what we've seen, over the last decade, 15 years or so, is for good or for bad, mechanical broadhead companies have pushed a giant 2-inch cut, 2.5-inch cut. Some
Yeah.
3-inch cuts exist in this world. And I guess through our previous experience with the Evo series, we've just kind of never really understood what you can put a, inch and a 16th hole through, and, why that 2-inch cut would be better. If you shoot something with a standard Evo, it would tend to just run 50 yards and die.
Yeah.
And by mechanical companies historically pushing that 2-inch cut, there's only so much I was able to do from a design and manufacturing standpoint to keep those heads short, compact, and keep as much of the leverage back toward the arrow shaft as possible. And that was really a lot of, I guess, where we started. That was a constraint we set up in the beginning of it has to be short, it needs to have premium materials, it needs to be as durable as possible.
Yeah.
While providing an advantage, the typical advantages that a mechanical would have, where you do get to bump that cut size up. Say for maybe a shot that's a little bit further back where you don't put, the best shot on an animal, blood trails, the advantages of a bigger entry and exit hole.
Yeah.
And that was one of the constraints we set in place. And just to, I guess hybrids have been around for a while. They weren't really around when I was shooting mechanicals. And what we've seen, the hybrid design just made the most sense from at least my experience of, I would shoot a non-hybrid head back when I was shooting a lot of mechanicals, and you just weren't getting an entry hole.
No, and the hard thing for Dakota is that he had really good designs as far back as 3 years ago, but I set these parameters that if we were going to ever produce a head like this, it had to be the same size as the Evo, not a bigger footprint, which in the beginning we kind of thought, well, might be impossible. I wanted that compact design. And then it was only going to be made with the very best materials and blade thickness like we do our standard heads. So then when you're adding 3 blades, you get into this weight constraint thing trying to hit 100 grains. Anybody can make a 125 grain head. That's easy. 100 grains is where it gets really tough. And so, and to be able to use the premium materials and still hit that weight, threshold that we wanted, it was really hard. We could have made it out of aluminum and been done in a week, but just wasn't what I was willing to do. And then the third thing was blade angle. It had to be what I felt like was as close to a blade angle as our fixed blades as possible. So you would get the best performance out of it. And essentially we were just trying to build a hybrid mechanical head that performed the same exact way that our Evo did. And it was incredibly hard. I think the turning point was when we came up with the idea of retaining the mechanical blades at the back, not at the front like everybody else does, or all the ones in the past have done historically. So when that happened and we started testing that and saw the performance of that, when we were getting interpoles, it actually became this like snag proof design, which was like one of my biggest pet peeves because I spent a lot of time on the ground in high brass, spot and stalk hunting. That's when I felt like, okay, this is a head that we can confidently sell to people and feel like we've made a marked change in every category that we were trying to address. And so what we did is gave them to Remy and some other guys, and they put them through the paces this year. Dakota shot quite a few animals with them this year. And in December, correct, of this year, or of last year, I took them to our place in Oklahoma and actually shot 4 deer with them in Oklahoma. And those are that's the first 4 animals I've ever shot with a mechanical in my life. I'm 53 years old. So, but yeah, it was impressive. I didn't see a difference in performance between that and our standard Evos. So at that point, I felt like, I think we're ready to go. The biggest booger we dealt with on this whole thing is the O-rings. Like, I mean, they kicked our butt trying to find the right material, the right hardness, the right size, because we wanted it absolutely perfect. And at one point, we had, I think, 30 different O-rings and heads laid out on our table, testing the performance, we put them in the freezer, we put them on the dash of our trucks, for heat and UV exposure. And literally, I mean, that was probably a 3 or 4 month process, is just getting the perfect O-ring. And like with everything we do, we actually had to end up having a O-ring custom made to perform the way we wanted to. Out of the millions of O-rings that's out there, we couldn't find one that we were happy with, so we had one made. Just like it seems like everything we do has to be custom done. So,
well, I think that's something that a lot of folks don't necessarily think about. They hear us talk about that these are MagnaCut, the ferrules are grade 5 titanium, the screws are hardened, the dowel pins are hardened, all of that stuff we're Phillips selling. But if you've shot a mechanical for a long time, especially one that uses an O-ring type retention system, you've experienced that need to exchange. You might buy a pack of broadheads that were on the shelf, and then maybe they sat there for 2 years, and you go to open them up, and the cracking and the UV degradation that those O-rings have experienced just in the packaging, the material we selected, like Brian said, we were forced to go full custom. And I think that's an advantage that we have, as much as it is a problem sometimes for you and I, of having to get through that.
The difference between day 6 and a lot of the people that are in our space is that right now we're sitting 20 feet from our machine shop, and we have the ability to make real-time changes. We don't have to send it off and send a drawing off, and we don't have to hire someone to do drawings. Dakota does the drawings. He does the CAD design. He runs the machine shop. And so as we're making changes and testing in our range that's 50 feet away, we have the ability to make everything happen in real time. And what happens with most manufacturers is, because I've experienced this, is when you have to outsource everything, especially if you're outsourcing things overseas, your prototype process becomes very limited. You have a lot of constraints, financially, time, and all of that. And what happens is people get to that 80% mark and go, that's good enough. We can't afford, either financially or time wise, to continue to take it all the way to the end. So I know everyone's heard, like, after a year of testing and development, which, by the way, obviously everything in archery takes 1 year to develop and test. We've come up with this, game-changing thing. This literally was longer than a 3-year process because Dakota had to talk me into it for a year before we even started prototyping. So this is a long time coming. And if I'm being quite honest, it was also I wouldn't say moral, but ethics thing for me. Like, I've never been a mechanical guy. I've never shot one until December. And there was no way I was releasing something that wasn't a very close equivalent to what we make in the fixed blades and that are fixed blades that are available. And I feel confident that we're super close there, to almost the same performance as what our fixed blades are. Now, people ask why MagnaCut, and why no one else makes MagnaCut. First off, MagnaCut is very hard to deal with from a heat treatment standpoint. It takes a whole nother level of heat treating equipment or a facility to get it to certain temperatures. And then we also had to play with the hardness of it, because you can get MagnaCut in any steel. Too hard, which is great for edge retention, but it's not good for durability on impact. So we had to play with that heat treatment range to get it perfect, because you actually don't want to heat treat MagnaCut the same way that a custom knife company would heat their knife blade, because it's two different applications. You have to heat treat it for edge retention and a blend of impact resistance. So it's very hard to deal with. Number two, the reason you don't see it on broadheads is it's extremely expensive. And then number three, one of the main reasons is that you can only source MagnaCut here in the US. You can't have your blades made overseas with MagnaCut. It has to be, a standard generic steel like, what is it, 416 or 420?
416, 420 is typically
A2, D2, it's like
all that
S2, all the standard
commodity type steels that are everywhere, right?
Yeah, it's just like a generic, readily available steel. And that's why you see, when you look at like most of the things that are out there, most broadheads, like your premium stuff, is usually made from A2 or S2, I think.
S7.
S7, yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
But both of those rust. And so that was a non-negotiable for me from the very beginning with us. And then the other thing is that, they don't hold an edge as well as like some of this higher end stainless does, the MagnaCuts and S35s. Their edge retention is by far superior. MagnaCut is one of the first steels that actually exceeds the durability or impact resistance or toughness of those common tool steels like A2, S7.
Well, and even S35, right? Like, we are carrying MagnaCut through the entire Evo series.
Yes, yeah. And that is definitely something to talk about, is now that we've basically run all the testing and got the heat treatment and everything right for the verse with MagnaCut, we're now converting all of our Day 6 broadheads, all the Evo fixed blade series is all going to be offered in MagnaCut now as well. And we will be the first broadhead company or broadheads ever to be made in MagnaCut. And it's because of that reason, where they're made geographically, the cost, and of course the difficulty to work with from a manufacturing standpoint. So, it is it is, it's hard to convey how hard it was for me to make a mechanical to start with, but how confident we are in this now because of, I guess, the constraints I placed on Dakota and our design. Our whole team worked together to design this because it had to be perfect or it wasn't going to happen. So I think it's going to be probably by far our number one.
Oh, definitely. I mean,
overnight.
You've said it perfectly before of, why do it? You and I had, when we met, we were, this is our life. That's, bow hunting has become just a part of who we are. And we both have a tendency to take that to probably an unhealthy level if you ask our wives.
Can confirm.
And neither one of us really, I wouldn't say saw the need, but supported the need of a mechanical due to the fact that we were always aiming to dedicate the time to getting our setups correct.
It's a good point.
Going through our tunings, having a bomb-proof setup and constantly knowing what to do. And the way you said perfectly is we just weren't helping enough people. Most of our day-to-day is dealing with customers on the phone of talking them through tuning problems. The arrows thing, we've got that down pattern, and we have a system that if we put you in, your success rate is you're going to increase.
Yeah.
But it's always the tuning process of how do I get my fixed plates to fly.
Yeah.
I think part of, why people struggle isn't, their necessarily their woodsmanship or things of that nature, but maybe they just put a bad shot on an amp.
Yeah.
There's a lot there. And by dipping our toe into this side of the broadhead market, we're able to provide just a little bit more forgiveness. One thing I think that you'll never hear us claim is that they're going to fly like a field point, because they're still going to require a level of tuning. Our lives are not going to change in terms of our tuning process and what we want people to do. It's probably going to become more of a requirement to focus on that bare shaft flight and developing a good tune, because you do have some energy robbing potential of a mechanical. That's just the downside of a mechanical.
Yeah.
But having said all of that, all the testing we've done to various distances and different conditions and things like that, the accuracy has been superb. That's a requirement for me. Brian has his list of requirements, but for me, if it is not accurate, it cannot leave this building.
Well, the only reason that mechanical broadheads even exist is for accuracy. That's it. If everyone could shoot their bow and shoot a fixed blade head the exact same as their fill points, mechanicals never would have even hit the earth.
Yep.
There's no other advantage other than that. So we had to keep that in mind while we were designing it, i.e. compact, small design, because we want to keep that footprint super small, so you're limiting the amount of drag difference between your fill points and your mechanical, your broadhead. So it had to be accurate, or there's no point. Mm-hmm. And for us, by making it so small, it just helps in that tremendously. But it's going to be interesting to see how many more people we bring into the day 6 circle just through this head as that conduit to bring more people to us, because we don't get a lot of customers because they are not fixed blade confident. And at the end of the day, like, day 6 exists so we can expand the circle of people we help become more efficient, ethical bow hunters, because it's fun to help people. And there's a lot of enjoyment that comes from that. And we have been catering to kind of the 1% with our premium arrows, premium fixed blade broadheads, guys that have the time, knowledge, skill set to properly tune and get great broadhead flight. Now we get to enter into that circle of the other 99%, which is kind of exciting for us. And I think it's going to be a lot more fulfilling.